so Mark is the, as the slide on the screen indicates, Managing Director and Principal Licensee of Bluestone Property Management and Sales. And I thought perhaps I might kick off our little segment, Mark, with a comment that I'm amazed at how many people I see or speak to who say they want to buy local, and one of the reasons they want to buy local is because they want to be able to keep an eye on it themselves and self-manage it. I always think that anyone who manages their own real estate has got a fool for a client. It's always a mistake. What do you think?
Yeah, look, until about 30 seconds ago, before the other gentleman was about to speak, I'm sitting here working. I'm currently trying to resolve an issue that was a private management that we've taken over. And I finally convinced the owner to stop communicating with the tenants directly because it's just convoluting the problem. The tenants are trying to play ourselves against the owner. But, the biggest problem that we see is the exposure that private landlords put themselves to through, breaches of the legislation and different things like that. A recent case we've had has another management we took over. There was no entry condition reports done, no formal lease. They had a flatmates.com lease in place. No bond was taken, and we've just managed to kick the tenant out through QCAT, through a warrant of possession. 2 police cars turned up, 4 police. Needless to say, the cleaning bill was about $2,000. Zero chance of recovering that from the tenant because it wasn't set up properly, and they owed nearly $4,000 in rent. So $6,000 the owner's out of pocket, and would roughly equate to around about 4 years worth of management fees. So
okay, so it's a very graphic but a wonderful illustration of the perils of trying to self-manage your real estate. I mean, for a relatively small fee, you can avoid all those problems. Have a professional on board who knows the rules and make sure that you follow them. And over time, you're probably going to get a much better result and a much better bottom line.
Yeah, look, it's for most people, it's tax deductible. You've got a professional who knows. It's to be perfectly honest with everybody listening, it's extremely difficult even for us to stay up to date with the legislation, which is quite ambiguous, open to interpretation. And tenants these days, with the access they've got to all the resources online, are able to, flaunt that in your face in many instances and try and work within the grey areas, take advantage of it. So, yeah, look, we find that, it is, in many cases, we can make owners more money through good management than they can save by doing it themselves. And we do that primarily through minimising vacancy periods, maximising the rent, and also mitigating loss through lost rent and damage and cleaning to the property.
Okay, and just a reminder for people watching again, if you've got questions, we're going to be speaking to Mark Shorrock from Bluestone Property Management and Sales for the next 10 minutes or so. So please type in your questions if you have any questions on property management issues. So I guess the bottom line argument that you would put forward is that even though having a property manager on board does cost some money, you're actually, at the end of the day, actually making more money than you cost through various means.
Yeah, that's correct, Terry. We just see, I've lost count. I've been doing this for 21 years, and I just have lost count of how many times we've been able to prove that to private landlords. And the most recent case, we've got one in question now, recently taken over, and another one we took over not so recently ago. We've got issues, they're actual cases that we're working on resolving right now. And, we stand behind the fact that we can make more money than they're trying to save through good management.
Okay, and partly that'll be having a good understanding of the ability to get good, strong rentals for your clients. Yeah,
look, it's I think it's about maximising their position. We create equity within the property. We maximise cash flow. Like I said, it's tax deductible. In addition to the tax deductions that tax depreciation you were going to talk about before me, but all of those things, it puts more money back in the investor's pocket. And the idea of this game is to, not just have one property, but to, as our screen behind me here says, grow that portfolio and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properties and get each one to leverage off the one in front of it. And that can really only be done. Unfortunately, a lot of investors have a bad experience with investment with property managers, or trying to do it themselves, or have had come across a property manager or an agency that hasn't done the right thing by them. But generally speaking, in most industries, there are rogues everywhere. But for the best part, industry professionals are out there. They're designed, they're specialists in their field, and their goal is to maximise your portfolio, help you grow that from 1, 2, 3, 4 properties. And by doing that, they're making more money, and we're making more money as a business as well.
Yeah. Look, just excuse me a moment, Mark. I'm just reading the messages I'm getting on the screen here.
There's one there about a region, popped up about regions to invest in maybe, but...
Yeah. Look, one of the great fears, Mark, that I hear people regularly express about property investment, particularly in certain areas, probably down market areas, is that they have a fear that they're going to get a tenant who's going to trash the place. I think it's probably a lot less prevalent than people think. The media tends to highlight the extreme examples, but my view, I've never had that experience in a lifetime of being a property investor. And I think one of the secrets to that is making sure you have not only a property manager, but a good property manager. And so that the people that rent the properties are properly vetted, and that you end up with good tenants and you don't have those sort of risks and worries.
Yeah, it all starts at the front end through, when the way the property's advertised. If it looks well with professional photos online, which are very inexpensive, we get those for our owners, $121 for 8 photos. It looks good online. The tenants come through. They can see that the property's clean and well maintained when they inspect the property. They apply for it, then we put them through a stringent tenant selection process where we screen them. If they jump through all of the hoops and we take them to the owner for final approval, then typically on the front end, that tenant selection does eliminate a lot of problems. Now, I've had doctors and lawyers and dentists go through separations and go off the rails and cause as much damage to a property as to someone from a lower socio-economic background. But then through regular routine inspections, a firm but fair approach to the legislation and breaches of it, and good communication with the owner, that you can maintain these tenancies to a very good standard. And when someone does slip behind and they do appear to be causing damage or cleanliness or falling behind in their rent, then we seek instructions from the owner to breach them through the legislation. And again, it's just managing that process, doing everything we can to mediate it and keep it out of the courts. If it gets to that stage, nobody wins. Just eats up a lot of everybody's time. And but you mentioned something about the low socio-economic areas. Then that tenant screening process is particularly important there. What we do tend to see, though, is that these people have a right to live anywhere as the rest of us do. If managed well, they still can pay the rent, and more often than not, they are quite often easier to deal with than some of the top end clients that we have. And the rents are typically also a little bit more positively or neutral or positively geared, as opposed to the higher socio-economic areas, where you get potentially better capital growth, a lower rental yield, and the trade-off is a higher rental yield, potentially lower capital growth.
One of our viewers, Mark, is asking the question, wondering if advice you're giving clients about completing upgrades to smoke alarms, and I think we're referring to a Queensland legislation there in that regard.
Yeah, look, we're putting some plans in place around that, and with our particular smoke alarm provider, we are offering a couple of different options there. In short, to answer that question, we are providing 2 options. Is that one is to get in quick and upgrade your whole property now, And the reason that is that we believe there's potentially going to be a shortage of tradespeople to fit these alarms, and also a shortage of the alarms to make these properties compliant. We've seen this happen before with the water tanks and the pink bat roofing insulations and some of these government schemes where there has been shortages. So to eliminate the risk, and as supply and demand goes on and we get closer to the pointy end of the stick where the compliance is due in 2021, undoubtedly we'll see prices increase. The other option is that our owners or any owner can progressively upgrade their property over the next 2-year period, maybe split it up into 2 or 4 works that need to be completed, and some sort of an instalment plan. Possibly some of these the bigger companies are providing payment plans. So, but look, at the end of the day, the properties have to be compliant. It's the law, and if you're not, you legally can't rent the property out.
Yeah, I guess the hardest thing for people who don't have a good property manager is keeping up with the legislative changes. And in Queensland, the state government is floating some quite major changes, which the industry is a little bit concerned about in terms of the rights that will give tenants as opposed to the rights of the people who own the property. But it's just the issue of remaining current with those sorts of changes that you do need a good property manager.
Yeah, that good, very, very, very good point, Terry. And I'll try and give 2 examples as to that legislation. Now, we are as an industry, we do have a representative lobbying for us against the government because it just doesn't make sense. Like, we can't force, or no owner, whether it be a private owner or an agency, can't force a tenant that's had pets in the property to get a professional flea treatment done, and nor can we force tenants to get professional carpet cleaning. But the trick is, and I won't go into detail, but when we manage as many properties as we do, and you've been doing it for as long as I have, we devise strategies around that where we use the grey areas within the legislation to coerce tenants to get the desired results. So we sort of say to them, we talk about the standard of cleanliness being that to a professional clean. So when a tenant moves in, we say, look, the previous tenant had a professional clean done. There's a copy of the invoice for your records. When you vacate the property, you're required to bring it back to the same standard. So we can't actually use the words you are required to professionally clean the carpet, but we can require them to bring it back to the same standard. And then we give a couple of case studies where tenants have hired a machine from Bunnings or Coles or Woolies and had to do the carpets 2 or 3 times themselves to get it back to where they get a bond refund. And, we mentioned that the least amount of time you're going to have is when you're moving between properties. So, we can get professional carpet cleaning done because of the volume of work we provide these tradespeople with for under $200 on an average property. You'd be crazy as a tenant to go and hire a machine and do it yourself when you're trying to pack up and move houses.
Okay, mate, let's just finish with this question. And we've talked a little bit tonight about the importance of having on your team a good property manager. But how does a property owner distinguish between a good one and a bad one?
Oh, look, good question, Terry. You really need to interview your property manager. It's an ongoing relationship with them. The biggest mistake most people make is that they choose an agent based on fees alone. And I coined the phrase that a cheap property manager can be very expensive. You might be saving $2 or $3 a week on management fees. They only have to rent the property out for, $5 less a week than we do, and have the property sit vacant for 1 or 2 days more than us, and let the tenant get away with, a small cleaning bill or something at the end of it, or you authorise a couple of maintenance, which potentially could have been avoided through, troubleshooting, and it's ended up costing the owner more money. We do provide as part of the offer that we put in on tonight, that there's a very, we cover that in a lot more detail, and that is a comprehensive ultimate guide to property management. It's about 30 chapters, 7,000 words long, and I think there's roughly about 230 odd paragraphs and in that, and it's available for people to download. They'll be sent a link, and absolutely free. It covers
Okay.
that question plus many, many more.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your contribution tonight, Mark. If anyone who'd like to follow up and have a further conversation with Mark Shorrock from Bluestone Property Management and Sales, the contact details are there on the screen now. And in particular, if you'd like to take advantage of that special offer, the Ultimate Guide that Mark's just been talking about. Mark, thanks for stepping into the breach. We had a bit of a technical glitch there with the preceding interview subject, so thanks for being flexible and filling that gap for us, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Terry. Thanks, everybody.